Happy Wine Wednesday, everyone. Hope you're having a excuse me. Hope you're having a fabulous week. Hopefully, I hope your tanks are all doing fantastic. And we were planning to do freshwater dips this week, but I couldn't get the videos ready in time, so we are going to do freshwater dips next week, and we're actually going to show you the difference between a seahorse reacting to the dip and a seahorse not reacting. So be sure to tune in next week. But this week is just going to be open chat. A couple of quick announcements. First off, I did post the questionnaire thing, not questionnaire, but I did the post where we want more questions about hatching Artemia and fry so that we can schedule the date for the final Ask Seahorse Source Part 4. But he wants all of your questions. So go look for that post either on Seahorse Whisperer page or in Seahorse Sources group and put some questions on there so I can add them to the list because it's going to be a fabulous episode. Not sure where Ray's at tonight, but I do have Cheryl and Holly with me. If you're on Instagram, as per usual, it's going to look funny, but you can listen to us. And if you want to see us, or if you want us to see your comments, just jump on over to YouTube, search Seahorse Whisperer, and there we will be. I have a couple of little clips to show you guys this week from Holly. And the only other announcement, let me sip my wine first here. I'm sipping on Chardonnay. Let me know what you're sipping on. And again, it's open chat. So anything you want to chat about, questions in the comments, we will take. And the only other thing I wanted to show you guys is that MACNA is coming up on the 9th. And let's see if I can open this up. Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry, 1 second. I should have been ready here. You'll see this post. If I can share it. You will see this post. Oh, maybe. Okay, there we go. This post will be put up right after our Wine Wednesday. So, and then it'll be shared around tomorrow during the day. And the cool part is that I'm not even positive that I'm going to be able to make it just because of I need tires and all this other stuff. But Felicia McCauley, who was one of my mentors and who knows more than I ever could about seahorses, she's like the bomb when it comes to seahorses, has agreed to, co-host the event so that in case I don't get there, she's going to be there to, get together with you guys. So anybody who's going to MACNA, make sure you sign up for the Seahorse and Pipefish event. It's at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, and it's on Friday, the 9th. And you can register. You can register for free at macna.org. You do have to register, I believe, so make sure you do. And the coolest part is that Felicia has agreed to, if I go or not, Felicia has agreed to do some sort of live thing, like either we'll give you more details in the event post, but she is going to make sure anybody who's in Australia or anybody who can't make it, that kind of stuff, even if you won't, be physically there, you'll still be able to take part in the event. So look for this event post coming tonight and tomorrow, and make sure you register and sign up, and we hope to see you there. We'll also have, I don't have the picture for this one, but Women in Reefing is also a side event to MACNA. So like if you've never been to MACNA, MACNA is this huge conference. It's a Marine Aquarium Conference of North America. So it's like huge. All the vendors go. There's tons of great speakers. You get to meet so many incredible people and learn so much. And they have prizes and all of that. But it's like the biggest conference for the aquarium industry, I personally think, of the year. There's a lot of good conferences, but MACNA is like huge. And so it's 3 days. And what the Seahorse and Pipefish and Women in Reefing events are like side events. In fact, you know what? I'll just show you the schedule real quick here. So this is the MACNA schedule. And here we go. So what did I do? Can you guys see it? Okay. So on the schedule, basically, it starts Friday, right? Or, well, Friday is when it really starts. And, there's a breakfast, there's speakers. During all of this time, the conference, the floor is open. So all the vendors will be running their booths during all of this time, but there's speakers, workshops, and then you see Seahorse and Pipefish right here. and that's 1:30 on Friday. And basically, it's like a side free get together for people who like and want to learn about seahorses and pipefish or want to share. So, and then, of course, there's all sorts of different things. And then on Saturday, we've got Women in Reefing at 10:30 a.m. So when you go to sign up for MACNA, if you buy a MACNA ticket, you get all of this. If you sign up for Women in Reefing and Seahorse and Pipefish only, then you can go to these events for free, but you can't go to the conference. So I hope that made sense. Did that make sense, guys? I think it did. But again, the cool part is even if you can't physically make it to MACNA, at least for the Seahorse and Pipefish event, we are going to have something live. So go ahead and get registered anyways. And when I put the event post up, sign up there and make sure, that you're a part of it so we can send you a link or, so you can be included when Felicia does the live. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Shyla. Kevin, we're getting ready to show some Robert King char chamber videos here in just a second, showing Holly seahorses on them. But I did want to ask Cheryl, Holly, anything else you want to report or anything we need to discuss before I show the videos?
No.
The clips?
I'm loving mine.
Yeah? Did you do anything? I remember you showed us that you kind of added some PVC to it. How's it going?
It's doing great. The water is staying crystal clear. No problems to report really at all.
Great.
Okay, and it does its thing.
It does its thing, absolutely. And what was I going to say? Oh, sorry if you hear background noise, guys. I couldn't find my AirPods, so I'm like, sorry. But anyways,
they're next year.
Yeah, and we're so excited to hear you attend virtually for the MACNA Seahorse event. Absolutely. We can all thank Felicia for that, and I'll give her buku credit when we do the post. Look for it. I'm going to put it up tonight, but we're going to share it around tomorrow. But make sure you not only join the event post on Facebook or on Instagram, but also go register on macna.org. But yeah, so it's going to be great. Can't wait. So register again. I know I'm repeating myself, but register even if you aren't going to physically be there. Register for just the Seahorse Pipefish event. And okay, so I overtalked you. I feel like Kevin said cleaner water and no problems seem to be the normal. Exactly. I mean, it's one of those things like Dan and Cheryl have talked about probiotics before, and it's hard because you don't really see how great it's doing. But with the Robert King chamber, you actually can see, like, my water instantly got clearer. Algae started going away. Holly, who was the one who was asking about algae, if it was good for algae?
Oh, I was. I have noticed a difference. This week there was less algae. It didn't not completely gone. I still get like a film algae. I do my tank cleaning once a week and have to wipe down off the film algae. But I noticed there was less this week than there was last week. And not as much of the GHA either. So it's starting to impact. And you have to remember, I've only had it going, I think, 2 weeks now. Mm-hmm. So not long at all. So yeah, still watching to see. And yeah, it's a little better every week. So
I have no algae at all in the tank that I've got it in right now. Absolutely. I mean, it's crystal clear.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice.
Well, and don't forget, if you haven't seen these before, Robert King's chamber is what he found a unique way to case the aquachar, which starts off kind of like a charcoal and then eventually becomes a biofilter, and you can add more, so it's doing both bio and charcoals, or pulling the organics or the bad stuff. All right, so let me see if I can get her. I just wanted to show Holly's beautiful little seahorses enjoying it, because a lot of people worry about what?
They said they love it.
I was going to say, a lot of people worry about
toy to them.
Yep. And a lot of people worry about, oh shoot, hang on, I can't do that. A lot of people worry about bubbles in a seahorse tank. So let me see if I can share this. Here we go.
The only time I've had a problem with bubbles was the male that I named Here's Your Sign after Jeff's Box Really Stupid, because he would go and hitch to the airline, fill his pouch with air, and float to the top when he was courting.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't seen that problem with this.
They're sitting there courting by the bubbles.
They're courting right over it.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you'll notice he's not opening his pouch over the bubbles. He
Right.
doesn't really have an interest in doing that. They kind of play in there and hang out there, but yeah, he's not putting himself over the bubbles and putting bubbles in his pouch.
All right, let me see if I can get the next one now.
Depending on the species, I've had watched some of my males that will literally go to an airline and open it at a rigid airline and literally move back and forth like they're getting a pouch massage when they're getting very pregnant and very uncomfortable. And that's the only way I can describe it. And they'll do that for hours.
There's Ray.
Hello. I was sitting here listening to you all.
Hi there.
Sorry.
And
What was your question, Ray?
the
Before
host
I
was busy, I guess.
What was your question before I ask or I show the next clip?
No, I was curious. Like everybody talks about the char chamber, but I haven't heard anyone setting up two systems the same, one with char and one using carbon in a reactor to see what differences there are.
Well, that's
I
what
was
I'm gonna do as
actually
soon as I get
planning
high.
on doing that, Ray, because I've thought about doing that the same way I did the K1, in a pop bottle with holes in it, narration.
And see if there's
You
a
think
difference.
It would work.
Yeah, you think that would work? Because they're big enough pieces, they won't come out the holes.
Exactly.
Right. Well,
the thing is,
what the char.
hang on. Let's not all talk at the same time. Ray first. Go.
I've used 2-liter pop bottles over the years, but at the moment the only one I'm using is because I only have the one tank going now, and I'm just using I can't think of the name of the reactor now. Two Little Fishies reactor or something maybe.
Yep.
But instead of using the I can't get the name out. The iron. Yeah, whatever the stuff is supposed to be in that reactor.
Right.
Instead of using that, I run carbon in it because I'm not running a skimmer on that tank.
Gotcha. Well, and Cheryl, you talk. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just asking Ray, are we the Bosband reactors? You can run it like biopellet reactors with two little fishies.
Use it like what?
You can the biopellet reactors. You can run them. The two little fishies. You can run them as like biopellet reactors as well. In fact, somebody just posted a pic a couple days ago. They're now advertising their 550, which is the largest one that they make, as a nursery for seahorse fry.
Cool. Well, I don't know, but Holly, if you do the comparison with trying to use like the aquachar in that kind of different contraption and see the difference, I'm going to do the comparison. If I ever get these darn fry, and I'm already looking at, because the pair that I was most hopeful for is kind of disappointing me. So I'm looking at adding more seahorses to make this happen. But my goal is, I was sent 2 char chambers. The first one, Robert King char chambers, I need to say. The first one I put in the 40-gallon all-in-one, and it like just crystallized the water. I have to force myself to do water changes because this stuff works so well. And I've been using it long enough that now, as Kevin said, poor man, I'm going to get back to your comment in just a second. But Kevin said, when algae starts to return on the glass, that's when you may need to swap out about 25% of the aquachar. And so I haven't started to see it yet, but I've kept up on my maintenance and my water changes. So I'm going to use that as a cue to determine when to add a little bit more. And I've already made a video. It's not posted yet, but made a video of flushing the system, putting it in the 40-gallon, and I will make a video. And the video shows the differences before and after over the weeks. And I will make a video when I add more to the Robert King chamber. I know I'm rambling, but if Holly's going to do that comparison, the second chamber that I was sent is what I'm going to use to compare the tanks to equally exactly the same made tubs on different sumps, and I'm going to add one char chamber and one not. So it'll be testing, Ray, I really could add charcoal to the other one to see if there's a difference. Is that what you want to
Yeah.
see? Okay.
Just some activated carbon.
You'd have to have pretty well similar tank setups, and that's hard to do.
Right.
Where you're trying to get everything exactly the same, and the only difference would be one would have the char and one would have regular carbon in some form. But it takes a lot to be able to set up something like that. You have to feed the exact same amount to each tank all the time, do the exact same water change frequency, volume, same husbandry. So it is hard, and it's not something you're going to know in the short term. It's probably going to be 6 months to a year before you can really get anything significant. So it takes someone that's got a lot of dedication and capability to be able to handle it.
Right. But I fall down on the job a lot, but that is my goal, Ray. Is I'm literally going to set, I usually, when I set up my tubs, I usually have 2 tubs on 1 sump. What I'm going to do is 2 tubs, separate sumps, right? And I know it's more equipment, but that's how I can really test. And at first, I think I'm just going to do one with the Robert King chamber and one without. But then eventually, maybe I'll try charcoal in the other one just to see or whatever. But first, I just want to show the difference that the chamber is making, right, in the aquachar. And so that's the plan. I just need the dang babies. I've been planning this forever. And I'm not a scientist, you guys. This isn't going to be some written paper or, the truth forever. But I will feed exactly the same, clean exactly the same, do everything exactly the same, like Ray's saying. It'll be amateur hobby day, but, that's my plan, is to do the best I can to show a true comparison.
Well,
I just need to try.
If you're going to do it, maintain a running log on each system of your specific water parameters.
Right. And that's the other thing is as Ray said, it might take 6 months a year to really truly show the differences, but I can update you guys each week. We can go over what's going on each week, and you can slowly see the progression. Whereas the full video or whatever won't be done for a long time. We can still talk about it each week, and I can tell you what's going on. And Robert King's here. And just to let you know, Robert, that's what we're literally talking about and showing Holly's seahorses on your chamber. So we're so happy you're here. Real quick before I show her video, Poor Man's Reef said Felicia sent you this way. You subscribed and followed on IG. So happy to have new people. Can't wait to see your horsies next year. And if you didn't catch the very beginning, make sure to sign up for the Seahorse and Pipefish event at MACNA, because even if you can't go to MACNA, you're still going to be able to attend the event, and Felicia and I will be running it. So any questions you have, that's what we're here for. Open chat nights that's all we do, is talk seahorses and what's working for us. So Robert, you want to post it on results real quick? Let me show one more of the clips. Let's see if I can get it here.
He missed the hanky-panky one.
He missed the hanky-panky, Robert. We showed her horses having hanky-panky right on the chamber.
You might have seen it on my page, though.
Yeah. But they just, they like it. I've seen seahorses bathe in the bubbles, like a shower. And that is the Robert King chamber, just in case you hadn't seen it before. And let's see, get the next one. Here's one more. Oops.
Sadie was hugging it today because it was cleaning day, and that red hitch, I took it out to put it in the bleach bucket along with a couple other things, and she went over and grabbed onto the Robert King chamber and wouldn't let go. She's like, "Don't take this one, Mom. Don't take my chamber."
Yep. Leave this one. So I guess the answer, Robert, if you're still here, is that so far, all 3 of the people that are using them in this group, Cheryl, Holly, and I, are very impressed, very happy. And I'm going to do the testing video as soon as I get Fry. I'm so angry that I don't have him yet. But all right. And let's see, what does A say? A says, "I was rid of all diatom brown algae, then changed the sand. Now after a couple weeks, it's back. Would swapping some aquachar help that? What do y'all think?" Anybody?
Well, it
I think
depends
Robert should
basically
say.
on why the diatoms and brown algae is there. Um, it could be because it's just the tank has just started up. It could be because not enough husbandry. It could be because you're feeding too much and not cleaning it properly. There's so many different things that can cause that, and it's possible the aquachar can help, but I'd rather spend time. If it was my tank, I'd want to spend time on getting the problem solved without it first.
Sure. And I want to. My couple questions for you are, as Ray said, sorry. How old's the tank? When did you set it up? How big is it? How many seahorses in it? And or what's in it? I guess I should say. Do you have a skimmer? What kind of equipment do you have on it? And are you using the aquachart in the Robert King chamber? Because I'm really looking. That's what I'm going to try to show soon. Is that the chamber really makes a difference? So I'm just curious on those questions. And I would say it can't hurt. You know what I'm saying? Ray is absolutely right. We need those questions answered because, maybe your water change schedule isn't enough. Maybe you're feeding too much. We don't know your situation, so I can't give you an 100% answer. But I would just say that swapping some out shouldn't hurt. That it couldn't hurt because the newer stuff acts as, like a charcoal. So, excuse me. So the other question would be, how long have you had the chamber or the aquachart in the tank? Because if you've only had it in for a couple months and you're already having trouble, then it's probably not going to help that much because it's something else. And there's no judgment on this channel, y'all. We've all made the mistakes. So if we say, oh, you're feeding too much, please don't, we're here to help because we've all done it. Okay. Just making that clear. But anyways, what else we got here?
I'd like to say that if you use the aquachar or carbon or whatever now, and you're not going to have the benefit of fixing the situation, and you're using a Band-Aid on something that you may not need it on. By making a look at the situation and seeing how your feeding program is and your water change and volume and frequency, your husbandry, how well are you cleaning up what's in it, all those kind of things. If you look after them first, you may not need the aquachar or carbon. And I'm a believer in go as simple as you can.
Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah, fix the problem properly rather than try to use a Band-Aid just to get by.
While I do agree with everything you just said, and this is just my personal opinion, guys, but I could see the Robert King chamber ending up a piece of equipment advised for keepers like a skimmer is. I mean, I could see that eventually leading to that. But I could be wrong. You are talking about a chemical filtration, at least at first. And so, I get what you're saying, Ray. And absolutely, if you're having trouble and you already have a chamber in your tank, then we need to figure out what's going on that's causing the problem, because you shouldn't be having those problems unless it's a brand new tank, because brand new tanks are going to go through the algae cycle. So unfortunately, there's just a lot of questions we have to ask in order to answer your question. But it's real. And I do agree with you, Ray. That would be like saying, oh, well, you don't need a skimmer on a tank because keep it simple. I don't agree with that
I'm
at all.
using carbon on that tank because I don't have a skimmer on that.
Right. So there could be swap outs. Right.
But the thing is, if you put the char chamber on there and you're not going to take care of the other problems that may be actually causing the problem, then you're going to be defeating the purpose. You're going to end up with too much nutrient in there. Your DO is going to be too high, and expecting the char chamber to take care of something that it's not designed to handle overload of feeding or improper maintenance. But But if you get the thing straightened around and then use the charge chamber instead of carbon, then I'm fine with that.
Absolutely agree. And I'll just add Robert King Chamber. I just want to keep making sure we say that name, because if you want one or you're interested in learning more, it's Robert King's Clownfish. I'll put the link in the description. That's where you can message him and find. Go ahead, Cheryl, and then I'll talk.
I was going to say, I look at the char chamber the same way I looked at my K1 media reactors, my skimmers, my UVs, and everything else. It's one more tool to provide them with an optimal habitat, and that's what I'm looking for. And yeah, I test my water on a regular basis. I'm very careful. At the same time, if I can get something better than bags of activated carbon, I'm tickled. That just leaves me more room in my baffles for rubble rock.
Absolutely. And
I
go ahead.
I was going to say, the first time I tried a K1 media, I was just gotten off work. I was still on company property. I got a phone call from Dan. I pulled over and parked next to one of the garages and had security staring at me thinking something was wrong. And Dan gave me the whole spiel about using K1. And I proceeded then to take apart my old skimmers that I hated. They were old Coral Life super skimmers, cut out the innards and turned them into K1 media reactors. And I've never looked back because it does really make a difference. But it's one more piece of the puzzle to providing them with more optimal habitat, in my opinion. And the easier it is to use and the better it works, the happier I am.
Gotcha. Real quick, Poor Man's Reef. Let me get back to you on that. I'll put it in the event post. So just look on Facebook. It'll be under Seahorse Whisperer, Felicia McCauley, and probably many other places. Just look for that picture I showed at the beginning, because I have to get with Kevin to find out exactly about the registering. I should have had that ready. I'm sorry, but I will let you know. And feel free to message me individually if you'd like.
Yeah, I've got a email if I didn't get rid of it from them for just that purpose. If I can find it, I should be able to. I'll send it to you.
Okay, absolutely, because we want to see everybody coming. And in the very least, make sure you put going on the event post so that we can get you a link to the virtual. And then Poor Man's Reef also said copepods will eat diatoms, main source of nutrition for them buggers. But Ray, what do you think about that? Copepods for diatoms.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Copepods for using copepods for diatoms.
I guess I can't comment on it really because I've never used it. The only thing I've had copepods in a tank are for fry and in my reef tanks. I've never actually put copepods in a Seahorse tank.
Yeah, I've done the same. I've raised them and propagated them and fed them for like newborn combs and engines and stuff like that. And I typically end up with them in my tanks. Don't ask me how or where they came from.
Right.
But it's one of those things where you have to be kind of careful because there's some copepods that can injure, particularly neonatal seahorses. And so you have to pay attention to what you're ordering and what you're getting if you're putting in copepods. My favorite is A. panamensis, Apocyclops panamensis, aka apex pods. They reproduce like gangbusters. They're easy to raise. They do not require live photo. They do great on algae paste. And you can put them in a 20-gallon, and you can put in a couple of dozen, and within a few weeks, you're going to have probably at least 1,000 of them.
And do you keep them in your rubble rock because when she says neonatal, Cheryl's talking about like fry. So if somebody's just got a tank of seahorses, but in your sump you've got the rubble rock, do you keep them in the sump?
I don't keep them in the sump. I have separate propagation tanks for the copepods because my primary focus is to use them for neonatal seahorse fry.
Gotcha.
And the thing is, they're great nutritional. They're a much higher nutritional level than basically baby brine shrimp, even if the fry are slightly larger. So
I know you love the Apex. Cheryl's about the Apex. But Holly, you use copepods in your tank because you have a Mandarin, right? Or you
No,
did?
I don't have my Mandarin anymore.
I know,
And
but you did.
yeah, I did. When I had the Mandarin, I had copepods in the tank with them. And that was when I had my rock and everything.
Well, and Poor Man's Reef, I think the real point he was trying to make it, he or she, sorry, is that diatoms are necessary for pod breeding. We just don't see it in established systems, but it's there. Right, exactly, because they're eating it, right? So I don't think it's a bad idea, but I know Ray also says a lot when you talk about any kind of cleanup crew, which in this case, you're kind of indicating that pods would be a cleanup crew. Even though they're eating the problem, the nutrients or the algae or whatever, they're still in the tank and they're still pooping it out. So the organics are still in the tank, right, Ray? Or did I say that wrong? Or
Yeah, it goes through from the Seahorse, then your cleanup crew eats it, and they put out their feces, and then some more smaller life forms will feed on that, and it'll have waste. So it just keeps on going on down through the system. Unless you're actually going to move the stuff out, find some way to get it out of the system, then gradually it's going to build up. Things like dissolved organics, especially because we can't test for it, we have to be proactive rather than reactive. Sometimes reactive is too late.
well, and that's why even after I added the Robert King chamber and my water's crystal clear, and on water change day, I'm like, oh, I can skip it. I don't because I know you still have to do the work. You can't depend on any piece of equipment to do everything. But as Robert said, the chamber is the key, and it becomes self-cleaning and it oxygenates the aerobic bacteria. Exactly. So it's like literally feeding itself and helping itself. And Kevin said it's like cheating. So we're going to keep testing these, and all Cheryl, Holly, and I both all have them now, and Andrea also. And I figured out, Andrea, the A is you. Sorry.
Yeah.
But
And I do see a difference. Like I said, the water is sparkling clear.
Yeah.
And I do have less. See, I have a light and the light's not that great. I was having trouble with it today, actually. But
you
I
and your
have
light.
I have a film algae, like a dark film algae that kind of grows on the back of the tank where the light sits right over it. And I've noticed, because last week it was worse than this week. Same time frame, 7 days, same water change every week. But there's a lot less of it this week than there was last week. And I haven't changed anything other than that chamber's been in there now a couple
The
weeks.
char chamber is
So the
helping
longer
to
it's
remove.
in there, the better it gets.
Yeah, the thing is, it's helping to remove some of the dissolved organics that are a pain to get with. The other thing that I saw just in the last week is the mackerel that I have in the one tank. All of a sudden, it's really happy.
really,
Nice.
It's
that's
growing. It's
interesting.
putting out new leaves. Don't ask me.
That's interesting. I wonder why that is. Huh.
I would have thought that it would have reduced the phosphates and therefore the macro, but the macro is actually doing better. But it may be because it's cleaner and getting better.
Yes. Well, and that's another thing. Like when just as a very basic comparison, in my reef tank, when I had an algae problem and I ended up using peroxide, peroxide and a bunch of different things to fix it. This was years ago. All of a sudden my corals were happier, everything was happier, and the same thought came to me, like, wait a minute, why would the macros in the refugium be doing better, and why would the corals be happier when I'm taking out nutrients? I'm removing nutrients, because it wasn't just the peroxide. I was doing other things to remove the organics and the nutrients, and I figured out it was because when the water's clearer, they get more light. More light can, like, you see a cloudy tank, the light's not getting through that cloud as well. It can, but it's anyways.
Well,
Um,
Kelly, do you use any probiotics?
well, what I'm talking about is on my reef tank years
No,
ago.
I know, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I use it mainly I use probiotics, on my fry tanks when I have them. And in my Seahorse tanks, I'm not very good at a schedule, like a regular, I don't use it every week or every day or whatever. But like when I think of it, I dump some in. I mean, I'm just pretty, but I mean, I feel like it doesn't hurt. So whatever. Why did you ask?
I was just curious because I use probiotics on a regular basis, and I have definitely noticed they also help maintain a cleaner, happier tank. So it's just one more. I kid about it. There's Dan's the one that got me started on it. Raising seahorse fry or keeping seahorses is like having a giant king cell puzzle. You get one piece that doesn't fit in the right spot, you're going to have problems. And I've never
Yeah.
forgot those words.
Absolutely. I'm still here, you guys. I just turned my video off when I'm dealing with family stuff at the same time. I got to multitask here, but anyhow, real quick, and we do jump around on open chat, so we'll go back to Chambers, Robert King Chambers. We'll go back to copepods. I think there was a copepod thought or question up here, but wait, hang on. Oh, Kevin, just about the copepods. Kevin said Algae Barn has to add diatoms to maintain certain pod species to have them reproduce. Absolutely. So, I mean, I get the point where that's going. And then Shyla, that's the one I wanted to say. And then we're gonna get to your question in just a second. But Shyla said her seahorses get annoyed when the copepods get on them. I have the exact same experience in my 40-gallon all-in-one. The copepods or whatever those little creepy crawlies are on my glass and on my equipment, they appeared out of nowhere, and I'm very careful. I don't cross contaminate, none of that stuff. And so they came in on something, and the seahorses don't like them. Not only are they too small to eat, but they crawl on them, and then they're exactly what Shiloh said, shake them off.
That varies by species.
Sure.
I'm wondering if, when you're saying that their seahorses are getting irritated, if they're the ones from California, the tiger pods from Southern California, because they do actually have claws that they use to hang onto the rock when the tide goes out and keep them hold their position. And they have been known to cause a lot of problems with seahorses over the years. I've never had a problem with any other pods, but I've never had tiger pods, so I'm not the best person to talk to.
I did have the tiger pods when I had the mandarin, because that was the only kind I could get here. And I never had
the Arctic variety, not the Southern California variety. Because we went.
No, they were the California one. Remember, we verified it on the bottle.
That's right.
A week or two ago, we looked it up. Yeah, they were the California kind. Okay. But my adult seahorses, I never noticed them behaving any different because of them, but I never noticed any of them crawling on the seahorses either. I would see them on the glass.
Yeah, I've never seen them on seahorses.
The rocks. I didn't see them get on the seahorses ever.
I've never seen them.
And same with, I had them with my fry for a little while. When I had fry and I didn't have the brine shrimp ready yet, I gave them those. And I don't know if they bothered them or not, but I didn't witness anything going on. They did eat them quite a bit, even though they were the tiger pods.
And those are big for fry.
They're different sizes. Some are tiny and some are bigger. And you got to remember too, I was raising them.
Right.
So I had baby ones too, not just the giant ones.
Ray, what were you going to say?
Tiger pods do jump on the seahorses.
Yeah. They do.
And I would say too, Shyla, you can let us know. But in my case, I didn't add copepods to the tank. They just appeared out of nowhere. I mean, it's a basic tank.
They
got
came from somewhere, Kelly.
I know, but let's not talk over each other, guys. But you guys have seen the 40-gallon all-in-one. It's rock, it's shower curtains, thanks to Heather's advice, and a couple of fake plants. There's nothing else in there. So I'm like, it had to come in on food or something because they just appeared. And of course, I know that means that my organics and stuff is growing, and there was probably diatoms, and they appeared. Then I added the Robert King chamber, and they disappeared. and the water quality was fantastic. But now I have, every once in a while I'll see them come back. So maybe that's when I need to add more media. But I don't know.
Yeah,
And
others have had problems with the tiger pards out of California with seahorses. And again, I'm going back close to 15 years ago, but back then we were hearing stories of them actually killing young seahorses.
well, luckily we haven't seen that in the hobby, but
Yeah,
I
mine were
definitely.
okay.
But I will say the ones that appear out of nowhere that you didn't add yourself, then you don't know what species. It's very hard to determine the
Yeah.
species if you don't if you don't have a microscope, if you don't know the species. Like for me, there's no way I'm going to know what species of copepods those are. And I've showed you guys, and it's just very hard to tell. And the ones that are in my tank absolutely get on the seahorses and absolutely annoy the piss out of them. So I don't know. They're just crawling. I don't think they're clawing, and they're tiny. But you can just tell the seahorses will start scratching and stuff. And then, of course, I'm worried that they have ciliates or whatever. And then I see these little teeny bugs crawling on them and all over the glass. And I know.
Do you have
But
a
you
macro
guys,
lens?
it would have. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Do you have a macro lens or a microscope, and can you get a picture and send it to me?
Yes, I will try.
Because
And
I've raised at least 5, or I'd have to six back and count 5 or 6 different species of copepods. So I'm
sure,
used to looking at them.
well, I will do that. And in the meantime, if somebody's having that kind of problem, is a freshwater dip, which we will discuss in depth next week, but is that a good way to alleviate their scratching immediately?
No, it's not going to work.
Why not?
If they're proliferating in a tank, simply moving one seahorse and giving them a freshwater dip or whatever, all that's going to do is you put them back in the tank and the pods are
Right
going
back
to
on.
go over them again.
Yep. No,
Not going to
I
get rid
agree.
of them.
So maybe get the Robert King chamber going first, and then
Well,
and then sorry.
It's this kind of stuff. Why nothing goes in my tank until it's been through a freshwater dip, a bath to kill anything that's on it. I use different coral remedies and stuff, and then it goes into 6 months of isolation before it ever goes into one of my other actual live tanks. For just that reason, because you never know. I've seen all kinds of stuff pop up on stuff you get shipped in, snails and everything else.
Well, you are the good example, Cheryl, but not everybody can always do that. So that's the perfect advice. You're right. But sometimes we got to figure out how to fix it after the problem, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Poor Man's Reef wanted to know. We're jumping around tonight, guys. I just ask the questions, I see them, and then we jump back to whatever the topic was. Poor Man's Reef wants to know, how often would you feed an Erectus seahorse? I'm having trouble filtering through what is legitimate good info on the internet. I want to say real quick, Seahorse Sources group should be where you're at, first of all, on Facebook. And second of all, I know I've said this for a year, but I'm this close to having the website done. And that will be your source you can trust from people like Cheryl and Dan and, and like us on Wine Wednesday. But let's go ahead and answer the question. And in Seahorse Sources group, currently, you can go to the file section, and there's all sorts of information. But let's answer it now. How often do you feed an Erectus seahorse, Ray?
I do it 4 times a day. I recommend 3 at the least. For fry, they're best to feed 6 to 12 times a day.
Yeah.
The more you can do it, the better. With the adults, the more often you can feed them, the healthier they will be. Their immune system will be better by more frequent feeding. And assuming that you only feed what they can eat in the 12 to 15-minute range and nothing more, then you're not going to really cause problems with your tank. There will be a little bit more overall if you do feed, say, 6 times a day. But I don't think for adults it's really needed unless you're trying to beef them up. If they are having problems and you need to boost their immune systems, and if you feed more often for 2 or 3 months, that can help give them a boost. But the trick is, though, to make sure that you're not overfeeding them so that you're overloading tank to give you other problems.
Yeah, Ray, I agree totally with you. It depends on the age and the size of the seahorses. And typically with adults, I feed about every 4 hours. Neonatal fry, I'm feeding them every 2 hours. And again, it depends. Erectus fry, they can go 3 or 4 hours to fry and still be fine. But Combs, Injuns, Cuda, those guys with the little bitty fry that they produce, they need to be fed a lot. Reed eye. How often did you feed your reed eye when you had them, Ray? Your,
The fry or the adults?
the fry.
Uh,
Continuous.
it was continuous at first, and then once they got bigger, and then put them in the other containers, it would be a minimum of 6 times a day. Once I retired, then I was doing more like 8 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
But Poor Man's Reef is also, how does it work when you work most hours of the day?
Yeah, wait. Hang on,
I
Ray.
can tell you.
Wait. Time out. I did not mean to interrupt you, Ray. I know you hate when you're in. I'm so sorry. But I was gonna, after you finished, I was gonna say one thing. First of all, I did put a link in the comment section. I'll put it in the description. A little video I did about how I determine how much to feed. 3 methods, and I think that's the right video. If not, I'll put the other post. But I did do a couple of videos about how I determine how much to feed each time. I personally try to feed 3 times a day, but for anybody who this is like, oh my gosh, I can't have seahorses 6 times a day. Holy crap. Holly, how do you feed adult seahorses?
I'll tell you, I am an insurance agent. I'm on the road a lot. I have some really long days. So when I am home, I feed them 3 times a day. They get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When I'm not home, it's breakfast and dinner, or sometimes, depending on my appointment times, it's breakfast and lunch. Because sometimes I'll get home, tank lights are out. It varies. My schedule varies all the time. So sometimes I'll even be totally away from home and they miss a day. And then I come home and they get more feedings the next few days after. So I do it as I can, but I've had the seahorses for years now. My oldest one is almost 4 now. So it seems to be working for them, and nobody's dying of hunger. So I think the answer when you're working is when you're around, feed them as much as you can, as many times through the day as you can. Like Ray said, 3 or 4 times a day, but don't worry too much if you have a day where you just can't be there and feed them 3 or 4 times. Go ahead and feed them the 2, or the 1, whatever you can, and just try to feed them as many times a day as possible. But they're not going to die of starvation if you miss a day.
Yeah, well, the thing is, he's talking about he has to work. And when I
Mhm.
started raising seahorses years before I retired, and back then I was working 10.5 hour days and had a half-hour drive each way, which
Mhm.
means I would get up 2 hours roughly before I had to be at work, feed seahorses, clean up what needed to be cleaned up. And then the adults wouldn't get fed again until I got home 10.5 hours later. And I
Mm.
used to then feed them as soon. I mean, the first thing I would do is go in and feed them. And then just before I went to bed, I would give them a small amount of a third feeding just to top them off. And that's the way I got around that. They really didn't seem to suffer. I mean, I had some beautiful, big erectus back then.
Mhm.
And it can work. It's just a matter of taking the determination to
Mhm.
get up early, feed, get home, feed immediately before you do anything else, and then feed us a smaller meal before you go to bed. And
Mhm.
that's how I got around
And
it.
I know Heather does kind of the same as me because she's a nurse. She
Yeah.
works, she says, sometimes 12-hour shifts or more,
Yeah.
and it's just gone. And so, yeah, so she feeds when she can, when she gets home, a few hours later, more feedings the next day. Just do what you can.
And I
Well,
put up Ray's comment, and I would just say that when you come and we talk, you have to remember that like Cheryl and Ray have been doing this for a very long time, and they both were able to do it eventually on a full-time basis. And so I would just say their advice is absolutely the best. But if you're a hobbyist just trying to keep seahorses, here, that's why me and Holly are here to tell you, you can get by with this stuff. It's just not good. The other thing I would say is, it also depends on if you're raising seahorses to be breeders, because then it becomes even more important, the feeding and making sure they have live feeds in the midst of the frozen feeds and etc. Cheryl, did you have something to say about that?
Well, I was going to say, one of the other things I did when I was working 10.5 hour days is I also maintained a fairly large stock of shrimp for them, live shrimp. And so I would feed them the meat they're frozen, and I was rushing out the door. I would add some live food, so they actually had food throughout the day. The only difference is they had to figure out a way to catch it,
Which is good for them. Go get exercise.
I'd just like to add on to it, though. People can feed more times a day, even when they're working, if they only think about it. If you're up an hour before you're going to work, feed them as soon as you get up, and then half an hour later, give them another feeding.
Yep.
When you come home from work, you can give them, even if you have to compress 2 feedings half an hour to an hour apart again, then that can get you in 4 feedings in a day. The main thing is to get at least a half an hour there. Because of their rudimentary digestive tract there, you want them to fill the tract and then not overfill it where they're pushing the stuff out without being properly processed. So you stop them for at least half an hour, more better, then feed them again. That way it gives them time to digest what's already in their system before they start pushing it out through again. So you can get 4 times in there with only an hour before work and an hour after work.
Well, I personally have seen, I was overfeeding my fry when I first started, and I can vouch for what Ray said. I've seen a seahorse fry eat a live brine shrimp, poop it out, and it's still alive and moving. I'm not kidding. Like, it did not digest whatsoever. So Ray is absolutely right. So Ray, your recommendation I see at the bottom of the screen is feed only what they can consume in 12 to 15 minutes, and then make sure between your feedings there are an hours? How long would you say?
Longest, do it as long in between as you can, but a minimum a half hour.
Okay, but if someone fed what they could eat in 12 minutes, and then fed when they came home what they could eat in 12 minutes, and then right before bed, which is at least half hour later, that's good.
Yeah. That's how I used to get in 4 feedings when I was working full time.
Yep. And poor man's or Heather, I'm sorry, Seahorse Corner said 3 times a day, but small meals frequently is ideal. Absolutely. And there was another question by Holly, and we'll jump around, guys, like I said, but how long have you guys been doing reefing? And have you ever just wanted to quit the hobby?
I've quit many times. I started in 1986.
Wow.
And I've quit many times. And usually for money reasons. It's an expensive hobby.
Yes.
And depending on where I was at in life at the time, what was going on. And if an expensive tank crashes, then I'd quit for a while because I have to, redo it. Yeah. I've quit the hobby a few times over the years.
Yeah,
Ray, how about you?
I started the aquatic hobby when I got into grade 5. That was in 1952.
Oh my God.
And
long time.
I switched to saltwater January of 93. And I started researching seahorses in 2002 and started keeping them in 2003.
And did you ever think about quitting?
Never.
Why?
Why would I think about it? I'm forced to quit now, but I have to.
That was mine. I probably
Yeah.
wouldn't have quit the times I did unless I was forced to. I've been forced to quit several times. I'll put it that way.
Well, but I just
But
have
still,
to because of my physical situation with my spine
Mhm.
and my kidney problems. Um,
Yeah.
I'll be 80 at my next birthday there coming up, and some of us just don't age the same as others. And
sure.
so I'm unable to do the things that I used to do. I had to quit the reefing and kept on with the seahorses because uh, doing the two together was just too much. And because I'd only been doing the seahorses a little while, then and I'd been doing reefing for a lot longer, so I dropped the reefing, kept the seahorses. But now I'm just about phased out on the seahorses. When the last one dies off, and that's it, no more.
Well, and I think too that you didn't know it, but we just needed you to do it for this long to teach us. But Ray, was it? And Cheryl, I'm coming to you next, and then me. But Ray, was it love? I mean, did you just love it, or did you do it truly to help other people figure things out, or was it just
No, I did it for myself.
because you loved it?
When I started, it was because the teacher I had set up an aquarium in the back of the room there. And of course, the first one was guppies, and it was having all sorts of guppies. So my first aquarium was a metal frame with panes of glass were puttied in with window putty.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
then he got swords, and then he got mollies, and of course they had babies. So then I had to get more tanks and
Just
take
adds
on
up.
these because most parents wouldn't let the kids bring any of these babies home.
Yep.
But my parents, they figured anything that kept me out of trouble,
Yeah.
let them do it. And so I just kept
I'm
on.
sorry.
And the only time I got out of the ornamental fish, well, I guess I never got out of it, but I branched out. Um, I used to bring home bass and sunfish and so on from under my dock at the cottage and keep them in aquariums here. And then I found out it was illegal. But
Yikes.
anyway, I kept them until eventually they died off. They don't grow full size in an aquarium anyway, the wild ones.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, listen real quick. If you guys hear the buzzing in the background, it's the significant other getting ready for work. He works third. So if it gets annoying, please put a comment in and I'll mute myself. Cheryl, you,
My
when did you get
first
into the hobby?
pets.
Did you? Oh, go ahead, Holly.
My first pets.
Ah,
Blind shrimp.
Actually, I grew up out in California along the Pacific coast. And my mom always called me her water baby because you couldn't keep me out of the water. And I love playing in tidal pools. I got nailed by some urchins and stuff like that and learned what to play with and what not to. And back then, I would splash water on all the starfish because they'd be hanging to the sides of the rocks and wouldn't in the water, and I was afraid they were going to get too hot. So I was trying to keep them warm or cool, rather. So I finally one day realized that they were there for a reason and they were happy where they were at. But anyway, my first fish tanks, I was a preschooler. And I raised guppies, swords, mollies, all kinds of stuff. And a neighbor down the street who had a big fish tank and a pond hired me when I was a preschooler and paid me money when she would go on vacation to take care of her fish. I was really
nice.
serious.
Very cool.
Anyway, I got out of it for a while, and the next thing I got into were the sea monkeys,
Yeah.
which were dwarf seahorses that they were selling, and brine shrimp. Unfortunately, the brine shrimp I ran out of, and I couldn't obtain any more. I lost them, and I swore I'd never, ever keep seahorses again. Then I went through another stage where I set up just a small tank, a 29-gallon, and I had scallops in there, and I don't remember what all else. And it did great. I was a happy little camper until my ex decided to pull the plug on it, literally.
Oh,
That was one of his missteps along the way.
mm,
Anyway, and then I got back into it after the divorce, and I was keeping, oh gosh, several very exotic freshwater fish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I set up a smaller tank and walked into the local fish store, who was owned by a friend of mine, and he had seahorses, and I'm going back over 15 years ago now.
Wow.
And so I took home a male, and my sons convinced me that the male was loadling. So I went back, and they said, "Oh, well, this is his female," and she was a beautiful red erectus. So I took home. Well, the next thing I know, I had baby seahorses.
We had to figure it out.
And the worst part of it was that year was the year that the only time I've lost power for over 12 hours here, because
Oof.
we had a major ice storm. A tree came down and took out the power lines. I get up and I'm wrapping tanks in blankets, and tanks got all the blankets, and I'm freezing my buns off. But and all my fry that I'd worked so hard and I was so proud of, because this was my first real success, were all laying on the bottom of the tank immobile. And I sat there and I was crying. I was literally crying because I assumed they were all dead. Little guys, they get up and they start to swim up a little higher in the tank, and it was colder at the top because I had a heating pad underneath on the bottom of the tank, and they go darting back down. And I realized they weren't dead.
Mm.
And their tank got down into the 40s. The adult tanks got down into they dropped down to about 62, 63 because it was below freezing inside.
Wow.
But all of those little fry made it, and those were the ones that went on to establish my actual breeding program for my seahorses.
That's awesome.
And it
Did
was
you ever think about quitting?
they're gonna have
Love
to, they're gonna have to drag me out of here. You're gonna have to drag me out of here screaming and kicking and throw me into a nursing home.
No.
I'm not quitting. I'm not going to give up.
But
I
what's
just-
really cool, go ahead, sorry.
I just enjoy them too much.
Well, I was going to say what's really cool, you guys, is that people like Ray and Cheryl and Dan not only come here to Wine Wednesday and run Seahorse Sources Group, but they're writing up articles and docs, which I will include on the website, but to share what they've learned in all this time. I personally haven't been doing it 50 years. I'm not even 50 years old. Don't you pretend like you thought I was. Just kidding. But anyways, I started freshwater too. I'll make it quick. Started freshwater, and I started with breeding because I got angelfish and they bred, and I had eggs, and I was like, oh my gosh, freshwater I'm talking. And so I had to figure that out. So I started breeding angelfish fry, sold some. Then I was like, oh, there's things even more complex, discus. So I had a beautiful planted discus tank. Oh God, I miss that tank to this day. It was so discus are amazing. You gotta get their water right, but they're just so cool. Then I was like, oh my gosh, there's coral. So then I went to reefing, set up a 55-gallon reef tank. It was oh, I missed that too. It was so pretty. It was a mixed coral reef. So I had everything in there, which is very dangerous, because things fight with each other. But I just happened to get lucky with placement. And then when I had trouble, I had my mentor, Cruz Arias, who helped me fix. And then I heard from Felicia. Felicia McCauley is the one who said, you can do seahorses. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I became like best buds with her, of course. I was like, be my friend, woman. And I ended up getting seahorses. She taught me about captive bred and all of that stuff. I made lots of mistakes at first, for sure. But then I did my beautiful macro seahorse tank. And then as Cheryl was describing, babies. And I was like, oh, I got to do this. And I ended up 10 tanks throughout my house, some very small, some depending on what I was doing. And then my mom passed. And I will say, from the day I started with water in general, not even salt water, but just fresh water with water, I never wanted to quit. There were times I'd get frustrated. When my reef started having trouble with algae, I was so frustrated, but I don't know if it was luck or just find the right mentor. I would find the right person. And instead of, as I think someone said earlier, there's so much different advice on, I would find the right mentor, and I would stick with them. So like if I'm doing in my reef tank, cruise areas had me doing a peroxide, and I can't even describe all the microbubbling. There was all these things he had me doing, and I would go online and I would see somebody else with the same problem, and there would be a different answer of, oh, do this, oh, use this. And I would go back to cruise and I'd be like, well, what about this? And he'd be like, nope, don't even look anymore, because you can't see the results if you start something and then try something else. I think
Exactly.
that's where most people get screwed up is and that's when we're talking seahorses, you hear from Cheryl, Ray, and Dan, but then you hear from me and Holly, and we say, they're right, but you can do it this much simpler way, but you kind of have to decide. You can always change in the future. I'm rambling, but in the reef tank, I'm going to stick with the process that I've decided to use and give it time to work. Because if you start jumping around and doing different things and taking advice from everybody or switching things up, then you never know what worked and you never get satisfactory results. So anyway,
you never know what actually worked, if it worked, because I went through that stage really bad, bad, because all of a sudden everything was be looking great again. And it's like, what did I do that worked?
Right. Exactly.
What did I do right?
So just to finish answering the question, I got frustrated many, many times. I never wanted to tear down any tank I've ever torn down. And when my mom passed recently, as the others have talked about, I won't go into detail, but there was depression and all that. I was very close with my mother, and I just wasn't taking care of the tanks. And so many of them failed because of my lack. Like my significant other tried, but
you were going
no idea.
You were going through.
You didn't have mama's touch, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up one Seahorse tank. And then recently I decided, what am I doing? I want to get back into this. I miss it. I love it. I can definitely say the reason I stay in it is for love. I adore seahorses. I adore watching them court. I adore trying to raise the fry. It's just it's not just a challenge. It's like you're their mama, especially with the fry or even the adults. Stupid story real quick, and then we'll get on with the questions. But my car, for some reason, this is way left field, guys, but my car, every time I walk out, my car is covered in wasps. Okay. I have no idea why. Sean says it's because I use a specific wax and I don't know. That's not really the point. The point is, I went to my seahorses tonight and I was like, I really wish you guys ate wasps because I'd feed them to you. It's a dumb story, but they're you know what I mean? They're like, I talk to them like they're my kids, and they come right up to the glass and they're like, mama. Of course, they just want food, but I just love it.
Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad. When I start singing "Grow, Grow, Grow," you know I'm in deep.
Oh, no. You're talking about me sitting beside a fry tank when my first, maybe second batch of fry. Please eat the frozen foods. Please, just try it. Look, mommy will try. Please try
like a baby.
Yes, but let me spoon feed you. But no, I mean, it's definitely for me, it's love. I did kind of quit after my mom passed, but I got right back in because I just love it. I'll be like Ray. They'll have to drag me out, and Cheryl kicking and screaming. But enough of our story. Let's get on to the questions. Or Ray, did you raise your hand? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to back up a bit to when you were commenting about you had advice on what to do, and then you were looking around, you found other advice in that. The danger that you run into when you're doing that is everybody's seahorses are different.
Yes.
You can have the same species, but you may have seahorses that their immune systems are just not the same as somebody else's. You may have a mixture of some with higher level or lower level immune system. Somebody else may be publishing something and saying that this worked on their tank, but maybe they have seahorses that have fantastic immune systems, and really what they did worked because of the fact that those seahorses could handle what you were doing or what they were doing, but it may not always work with what you have. So you pretty well have to go with the low end of the thing. Assume that your seahorses are at the low end of the scale.
Yes.
because if you have a number of them, say if you have four, you can almost always bet that one of them at least is going to have an immune system that's nowhere near what the others are. And you have to treat and look after that tank as though they were all that way, not just one that way.
Great point. Great point. I wish we had the actual statistics as to, how many out of how many captive bred seahorses will have problems, but there's probably no way to know that. Another point I would add on to Ray is that's why when you guys sometimes ask a question, we ask 5 questions in return. Because if you ask a question on Facebook or anywhere else and someone gives you an answer, if you say, well, I've got hair algae growing, what am I supposed to do? And you get an automatic answer, it's likely wrong, because anybody who has done this for a while is going to say, well, wait a minute, how old's your tank? How big's your tank? What equipment are you using? They're going to ask questions because everything matters. They're Ray's right. There's not a one size fits all answer for any of these questions.
Yeah.
And I would just say also, like I just mentioned, equipment matters too, and size of tank. All these things matter. But Ray was absolutely right on target with the immune system, and the health of each seahorse matters, but also your setup. Go ahead, guys, and then we got to get to the next question.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ray, because I personally, I do a lot of disease and treatment because I've had a lot of practice. And the worst part about it is I can't help you if I don't know your tank temperature, how long you've had them, how old are they, where did they come from, what are your water parameters. I'm not trying to be mean or circumvent the problem, but without a complete understanding, preferably photos, everything else, I can't really help you.
Sure. I'll say I'm one of the people that when I first met and dealt with Dan from Seahorse Source, went on the website, I tried to order seahorses, and then when you get to when it's not running anymore, but when you got to the point where you were going to buy, you couldn't enter your credit card. It literally said, hey, put in your phone number and we'll call you. And I was like, what the hell? I don't want to talk to somebody.
Dan's
I'm so
done that
glad
for
he
years.
did. Oh no, but I know, but that's so smart, because he called me and I had so many things not set up properly, and he asked me all the questions, and I'm just saying I'm one of the people that was like, who the hell are you? I just want the damn seahorses, right? But him asking those questions made me successful, so it was so.
It's because he and Abby care so much about what they were doing, and they care about the seahorses.
Yes.
And Dan has been my mentor on many, many things over the years. And I have an infinite respect for him and several other people that have helped me out. And my thing is, if I can help you, I'm going to do my best. But I can't help you unless you talk to me.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, moving along. We'll probably jump back to that in a minute. But Poor Man's Reef wants to know, what food are you geniuses? There's no that Cheryl and Ray have been doing this a long time. Me and Holly got lucky because we got their information. But what are you feeding mysis? What do you feed your seahorses? Cheryl, you want to go first?
Okay. Well, first of all, mysis shrimp is a freshwater shrimp or a brackish water shrimp. What is it? Ocean Pacifica? No, not Ocean Pacifica. The big one up in Canada. And yeah, all of theirs are freshwater species.
Okay.
Hikari is basically brackish water species, but neither of them have the ideal lipid profile to sustain saltwater fish long term, because they do not handle proteins. They do not synthesize or utilize proteins. They utilize lipids, and as such, need to be looking into additional foods that are higher in lipids. This is one of the reasons I started finding, when the krill pacifica came out, which is a saltwater species, why I bought some and started feeding them in the effort to increase their nutritional profile. It's also why I do feed live food to them, enriched live food with probiotics and the like. So it's one of those things where it's a little hard unless you've been at it a long time, because you're thinking, well, everybody feeds the mysis shrimp. Well, mysis shrimp is still a suboptimal diet. It lacks the lipid profile.
Okay, so that was the expert answer. Now I'm gonna go to a hobbyist, Holly.
So
do you
all
do?
I feed mine is the Hikari frozen mysis.
There you go. And they're healthy
And
and they
when
breed.
I was raising the fry, I did feed them enriched adult brine shrimp because I had it from raising them for the fry. So they got a treat now and then. But right now, all they're getting is the Hikari frozen mysis.
I got a research article I'll send you. It specifically assessed the growth rates of neonatal fry and Hippocampus erectus based on feeding several different diets through the first 5, 10, 12, and so on days. And they found that the best growth rates occurred when they were feeding them saltwater copepods.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff, basically the brine shrimp just didn't cut it. And they
Sure.
had more than the difference in the 12-day profile was huge. Most of the ones fed on basically brine shrimp, and they were enriching the brine shrimp, were dead in 4 to 5 days.
Well, that is why Wine Wednesday is so cool. Is you get the extreme expert position. If you're looking to go commercial, if you're looking to breed, conditioning breeders, you're going to need more than just mysis. And then you get the hobbyist aspect where I personally, and Ray, I'm coming to you next, but I personally, over the years, have fed nothing but PE mysis and Hikari mysis. And what I do is like every month, whatever, I'll buy. Oh, I thought it was staticking. Sorry. Every month or so, I'll buy either live mysid shrimp or brine shrimp and enrich them, and it's a treat. So it's not like an everyday thing. But my seahorses grew big, had babies, all that stuff. So if you want to do everything the absolute right way, Liz, absolutely how to do it. There's no doubt about that. But if you're just a hobbyist, want to keep a pair of seahorses and not wanting to breed and keep frying all that, you can get away with, and they're still healthy and happy. Like my seahorses were always healthy and happy. Not healthy enough, I understand, but they could be healthier. But they were okay. I mean,
I'm not trying to criticize anybody that's a hobbyist
I know.
because when you start talking about, okay, I've got A. panamensis, I've got Articotonsa, I've got 3 different types of micro or macro microalgae, phyto that I'm using to keep the other stuff alive. When
Right.
you added on 350 square feet just for tanks onto your house, and I mean it's a little
She's
overwhelming.
crazy. Just kidding.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
yeah.
But no,
I'm not.
no. Poor man's Rafe. And this is a good thing to say for future questions. When you and nothing's wrong with your question, obviously, but when you ask a question like that, it helps us a little bit if you say, "Hey, I'm wanting to do seahorses and breed them commercially. So how should I feed?" Or if you say, "I just want to keep a pair of seahorses in a tank because they're awesome. What do you do?" That kind of matters when it comes to the answer. But you get all the answers here. Ray, how about you?
Yeah.
Well, I figure while I fed live brine shrimp that were enriched uh, at least once a week, it was because I had to culture my own. Because here in Canada, it was very difficult, if not impossible, to get brine shrimp. And it ended up long before Seahorse days. I started culturing them so I could sell them to the stores that they could sell to their customers. So I had lots around to handle that when I got into seahorses, and I used to enrich them using Algamac 3050, which is Schizochytrium algae, which is the high DHA component. However, over the years, I had a lot of customers that I sold seahorses to that never fed anything but the frozen Hikari mysis.
Yep.
And while most people didn't manage to keep seahorses for very long, there were ones that kept them for quite a few years on nothing but Hikari mysis.
Mm-hmm.
So while I know they say you have to have the DHA, I'm not sure just how important that is. And I'm not sure that the shrimp don't have any. Um, I never got into following up in order to find out. I guess mainly because I didn't have any need to know any further because I was giving them DHA for myself, and the people that I sold them to, I told them, you can buy the brine shrimp or you can culture your own. I'll teach you how to do that. And if they chose not to do it, then that was up to them.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
they were successful, or many of them were successful. So I figure if any are successful using only the mysis, then I would say that it's probably it's probable that if you do everything right, then you can probably keep them long term on just mysis.
Well, and I would say, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Ray, is it really does depend on the seahorse. If you have a seahorse that's extremely healthy with that good gut bacteria and etc., they're good. You guys, was it Susan who kept the 14-year-old seahorse and just fed mysis? I can't remember. I'm
I
gonna have
don't
to.
know, but I remember Dan saying that he had clients that kept them for 12 years on just frozen mysis.
Yep. So
Well,
so again, guys,
it's like
everything. Well, hang on. Everything depends. Cheryl's absolutely right. And I personally do, especially if you're talking about fry, the enrichment's a must. Probiotics, all that stuff's a must. If you're talking about just keeping a pair of seahorses, you can keep them happily and healthy and not feel bad for just feeding frozen mysis. If you
yeah.
want them to be super healthy and strong, or if they're having problems, if they're not seeming that healthy, then enriching foods and using live foods and caring is important. But I'm just saying, for the average hobbyist, don't freak out. You don't have to do all that. That's all. Go ahead, Cheryl.
But what I was going to say is one pair of hippocampus combs I bought years ago. They were both in a fish store. They were obviously full, large adults. They were both emaciated. And this is the pair that I jumped out of bed before dawn every morning to run in and
Yep.
check and see if they were still alive. And they would not take brine shrimp. Did not recognize brine shrimp as food.
Yep.
They were wild caught. They would, don't ask me why, they did actually take frozen mysis. And that
Wow.
was the few things that I could get them to eat because they were extremely picky. They lived as I said, they were large adults when I got them. They lived in my home for almost 9 years.
Yep.
And
Well,
they were
Cheryl made a great point though. If you're just starting out with seahorses, definitely buy captive bred.
Oh, yeah.
You're better off buying from a breeder. And if you are going to buy from a store, we've talked about it in previous episodes. If you want us to go through it again, we can, but there are tricks like making sure that they're fed in front of you to see that they're eating, asking where they came from, those kind of things, because you definitely want captive bred. Because what Cheryl's talking about, when you talk wild caught seahorses, you're talking a whole different situation. Luckily, I don't see wild caught a lot anymore. I know it's different in different areas, but that's why it's better to go through a breeder. And if you need a reference for that, absolutely, we can give you that.
Well, I went through.
And Seahorse Corner said,
I went through a period with those combs where I knew that they were carriers of Uronema.
Yeah.
I spent over $300 getting live mustard shrimp just for the deworming protocol on them because I knew they were going to be loaded with parasites. Yeah. And there was more than one time that they regressed, and I thought I was going to lose them before I finally. And the first fry they produced were minuscule. They were so tiny, they had giant eyes and just didn't look like seahorse fry. A year later, they produced some more fry, and they were beautiful.
Yep.
I mean, it paid off. But my point is, I'd already had years of experience working with them to be able to get this point. And this is why I tell people, if you're going to buy seahorses, buy captive bred, from a reputable breeder. Don't go to a fish store. I know a fish store that was selling tiger tail babies, hippocampus combs, neonatal fry as dwarf seahorses.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But if you're already in that position, you've already bought the seahorses like Francis did, just go to Seahorse Sources Group or here and ask us and Cheryl, and we'll all help you get through it.
Yeah,
But
we're doing
we
that.
thank people like Cheryl, Ray, and Dan who have like led the way, and they conditioned those wild caught seahorses and provided captive bred seahorses for us, so we don't have to go through all of that. So don't be scared. You can get seahorses without all those problems by buying captive bred. And Heather said, feeding a varied diet made mine breed nonstop. That's a great point. Like, if you're just wanting, and I know you mean that to be a good thing, and it is, but if you're just wanting a pair of seahorses just in a tank and you don't want to expand and you don't want babies and all this
Get
stuff,
the same
maybe possibly
sex.
just hang on, maybe possibly just feeding the frozen mysis is a good thing because you're not getting them all rambunctious and ready to go. And you can be successful doing that. And if you want to breed and you want the fry, then we start diving into, oh, you've got to have enriched, live feeds on a more regular basis because you want them to be more robust and have healthier fry. So it's all depends on what you want. None of these answers are going to hurt your seahorses. If you're making, unless their bellies are caved, then you have a problem. But as long as they're fat and happy and healthy, I'm like,
Yeah, one of my biggest pet peeves is the stores that say, "Oh yeah, they're captive bred," and all you have to do is take one look at the size and the condition, and if you know what you're looking at, you know darn good and well they're wild caught. And it drives me bonkers when I see that kind of stuff.
yeah, no, I know. I saw the most adorable seahorse with all this Siri at my local store the other day, and I was so tempted. And it looked, I mean, now that I've been doing this for so many years, I can kind of tell if they're captive bred or not. You can just kind of tell
Oh yeah,
by their behaviors, by their shape, by everything. And this seahorse, I believe, was captive bred, but it was in a tank that was connected to all the other tanks. Some of the tanks had their lights out, so I know there's ick in the system, and or whatever. God knows what was in the system. And the seahorse was so tiny. Like, another tip I would say is ask how big the seahorse is you're buying, because you do want to buy a young seahorse that's an inch or two. You want them 3 to 4 inches. I mean, in my opinion, 2 to 4 inches, I should say.
but at the same, I see still even to this day see so much of it. Walked into a fish store, and they've got all these little bitty babies that are about
Yeah.
3/4, maybe an inch at the most. And I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at them, going, "Do you know what species they are?" Because I knew what species they were.
Of course.
No. Do you know how old they are? No.
Well, that's a red flag right there. Don't do it.
Well, they knew me, so they knew that they better not. I wasn't a good person to mess with.
Right.
They were rectus fry that somebody had, and the store took them in.
Such a shame. Hey, Poor Man's Reef wants to know, Felicia has said before that her best trick is before feeding the seahorses to siphon out the mysis food they didn't eat. Do you think a bare bottom tank would be a bad idea? Ray.
Sorry.
Ray's like, what?
Oh, well, I've been answering them. Sorry. I've been typing in answers.
I know.
Yeah,
We want them live, though.
if you remove it as soon as they've had enough in that 12 to 15 minutes, then you have less decay that's going to produce nutrient into the tank to slowly increase your levels of nutrient to feed nuisance algae and to feed the levels of dissolved organics. And eventually you should get down to the point where you'll put in and there'll be hardly anything left. And what is left should be handled by the filtration equipment if you have the tank set up right to keep it in motion long enough for the mechanical filtration to capture it.
Yeah.
Molly,
Yeah, I totally agree.
Molly, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I siphon food out immediately after they're done eating. And I do keep bare bottom tanks because it's a lot easier to see the leftovers and siphon them out. And yeah, I'm religious about it. So, as far as feeding them the right amount, like Heather says, I haven't become an expert on that. I use the flat packs of Hikari, so it's not pre-measured, but I have over the years developed a pretty good idea of what they will eat in a certain time period, but they eat differently every meal, I found. Some of them will come to one meal really hungry and want more, and then the next meal, they're not as interested in eating or they don't want it. Sometimes I'll give them food and they'll finish it all and they'll still be hungry. Sometimes I put in food and there's hanky panky going on and nobody wants to eat.
That's a good point.
Every
That's a good
meal
point.
is different in my tanks.
Molly, they've got you wrapped around their little tail.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, no, she's absolutely right.
I
I've
know
gotten
she
worried
is.
before. No,
I
I've gotten
agree
worried.
totally. I'm just
I've
laughing
gotten
because
worried.
she works so hard at keeping track of them, and she does such a wonderful job. And
Yes,
it's always funny. I always enjoy listening to her because she just works so hard at it.
they're her children.
I
And what I
know
was
they
going to say,
are.
I have personally experienced when my seahorses all of a sudden won't eat, and of course, that's immediate freak out because seahorses not eating is like the true downfall. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, see, oh, they're bright white. They're freaking spinning. They're courting. So the hanky panky is a little more important than the food.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Scrappy and Candy go through 3 days every few weeks where they don't really want to eat. That's
Yep.
all they want to do. That they're on that, and then I know how much to feed the other two.
Yep.
Yeah, the longer you have them, you get used to it. You get used to the individuals and how much each individual will eat. And it's like I know that Scrappy prefers dinner to lunch. He likes to nap through lunch. So sometimes he'll show up, sometimes he doesn't because he's napping and just doesn't care about it. But he's adamant about dinner.
Give me my
So yeah,
dinner.
they're all individuals.
They're all
Yeah, at
different.
least my tanks, they all have their own, little idiosyncrasies and habits.
My
Absolutely
favorite is
agree.
watching a pair, and they're circling and they're courting, and all of a sudden one of them breaks off and goes snicks a couple pints of shrimp. And they come back and they start, and then the other one goes off and snicks some.
Yeah.
And this is going on for like hours, where they're intermittently dancing and feeding, and I'm laughing my you know what off at them because they
Well,
just
I
can't decide.
personally think Ray's answer was right on, whether it was in the comments or here, but basically, I do bare bottom tanks too, but I've also done sanded tanks. I think the key to feeding is give them 12 to 15 minutes to eat, remove anything that's still there. Then you know to feed less maybe next time if there's still leftovers, depending on if they're doing hanky panky, of course. But remove anything left. And then when you feed again, 12 to 15 minutes. But, and you could have expanded on Felicia's comment, but all I want to make clear is remove the food after the 12 to 15 minutes. Don't wait till the next feeding. Don't leave it there because, like Ray
Yeah,
said,
don't leave
it'll
food
grow
in the tank.
bacteria. It'll become if a seahorse accidentally ate it, or if it gets lodged under a rock and becomes, a mess of feeding organics. So definitely remove the food after 12 to 15 minutes after you feed. And then I like bare bottom tanks only because they're easier. If you want a pretty tank, though, you can do it with sand too. I mean, I was able to pull that off multiple times. It's just what you want to do, is my
I
thoughts.
kept tanks with sands in them for many, many years. I now go all bare bottom because I can take one look at it and go, oops, got to siphon off a little bit here.
Yep.
But it's one of those things where I used to want the natural look, and then I came to the realization this is not a natural environment.
Right,
And-
but Cheryl, you're trying to breed though. You know what I mean? Like if someone
Yeah.
wants the look of
I
a
agree.
yeah. So I'm
I
not
agree.
arguing, I'm just saying.
If you only got one tank, do what you want. If you like it better with the sand,
That's right.
keep it that way. But when you're keeping more tanks, with more seahorses and so on, the workload just gets to the point where you're going to slack off. When you slack off, you lose seahorses.
And that's when it becomes more important to be bare bottom and that kind of thing.
Yep.
It is easier with bare bottom, but if you want sand and you're only doing a tank, I just try to play devil's advocate here, and they're giving the best advice, obvious, and say you can do it this way too. You will succeed if you do everything else we say, right?
I think I'll pull a Dan and Felicia. Set up one tank in the living room that's got the corals and the sand and everything in it, and everything else is in the back.
Yeah.
And Shyla said, my seahorses sit in the feeding dish until I clear the mysis. I never know if they've had enough. Do they keep
I can
eating?
tell you. Yeah, when they
That's
stop
why
eating, when they're staring at it, when they're just looking at it and thinking about it and playing with it, time for it to go.
Who
stop
was it
after
today?
12 to 15 minutes.
Candy does that sometimes.
Who
She'll
was it today
sit and look.
that posted the thing where I think it was Alicia, where she has two youngsters going in for the same piece of mysis, and they lock snouts.
Yep.
Yeah, you can usually
I've
tell
seen a
when they're
seahorse-
done because they start just looking at it instead of like snick, 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 snick.
Yep.
They start to study it more,
Yep.
and yeah, if something's sitting there, they can't help but look at it. Some of them, like Candy, will do that, and then I know she's done. I'm like, okay, siphons
gonna give
coming
you-
out. You're done.
I'm going to give you one more for tonight, and then I'm going to be quiet.
No,
One
you're
of my
fine. Go ahead.
favorites was a young female Combs that I raised, and she was only no more than 2 inches. And I was training them to eat frozen. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at her, and she's floating on her side around the tank in the circle. And I'm starting to freak
Oh,
out. There's something wrong. And she's slowly getting closer and closer and closer to this piece of frozen mysis. And she finally, after several minutes, snicks that mysis, that frozen mysis. And I was like, woohoo! She
nice.
scared me.
Nice.
They're funny, yeah, when they're learning to eat the frozen food and they hunt it, and they're so tiny, and the food is the size of their face.
Yeah.
And they're like hunting it, and then they snick it. And I've seen them wrestle it like a dog,
Yep.
wrestling a toy.
But it was
They're
so funny because I thought she was dying. I literally thought she was dying and something was wrong with her. And I was trying to figure out what I'd done wrong in the nursery and were all the others going to be infected. And I'm doing the panic mode, literally. And all of a sudden,
Yep. She was
Yeah.
hunting. She was hunting. Okay. Poor Man's Reef had another question. Has anyone noticed that the delicate babies, captive bred erectus, that do they not like large water changes, carbon media, dosing bacterias, or anything a normal reef keeper would be doing?
I do all of those.
Yep, and all that stuff's good for them. They actually enjoy water changes. Sometimes mine will like chase around the siphon, when you're siphoning, or they get excited after they get the clean water. Mine do on water change day. They get excited about it. That what they don't like is when I'm removing their hitches for the bleach bucket.
Yeah.
And then they'll like go and they'll throw a fit sometimes. They'll be looking around in the empty space like, Mom, what'd you do with my stuff? And the stuff's only gone, for usually a couple hours. It's summertime right now, so they get the bleach bucket, for several minutes, and then a good rinse, and then out to dry in the sun. So generally a couple hours later, the stuff is back in the tank. But every Wednesday water change day, it's the same thing. they know the routine, and they like parts of it and they don't like parts of it.
Well, one thing is too. The question was anything a normal reap keeper would be. In other words, before I got seahorses, I was keeping reef tanks back in the pre-stony days, so to speak. Back when most everybody's working with softies and most people weren't working with stonies, and I literally broke one of my tanks down. Well, actually, it broke itself down when the center brace burst. But
Hmm.
and so I was actually keeping reef tanks before I got into seahorses,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not really, in many respects, it's not really that different of a world, other than when you start getting into some of the really high end corals and coral growth that's going on now, where there's so many supplements and so many other things that they're doing in terms of filtration. But I'm not convinced it's really applicable to seahorses because these aren't species that you're pulling out 100 feet, below water level and trying to keep them alive and grow them out. And some of the acros and some of the other stuff these guys are growing are pretty phenomenal.
Sure. I would say, in my opinion, sorry, I keep trying to keep forgetting to turn myself back on. I would say that the biggest difference between reef keeping and keeping seahorses is understanding that temperature matters hugely. A lot of people want to attach a seahorse tank or put, to a reef tank or whatever. And the big key is that seahorses, as Ray kind of alluded to earlier, they got this gut situation, and they just will bacterial stuff hits them harder. So
Yeah.
we advise
Well,
keeping them
the,
under 74 degrees. And most reef tanks with coral are going to be above 78 degrees, right? 81, whatever. So that's the biggest difference, is that you have to control the temperature in a seahorse tank. And I would say we advise keeping seahorses under 74 degrees. But the big key is not having swings. Because when my seahorses got a terrible Vibrio infection and I had to treat them, and I was successful. But the reason was because I use my home central air to monitor my seahorse tanks. So I keep my house a certain temperature, and the seahorse tanks all stay 72 or whatever. And the central air went out. And so I came home and my seahorse tank was like at 81 degrees, and that shoot up is what caused the problem.
yeah.
So what even if to keep seahorses at 70 or whatever, that's not good, but it's better than having them be at 60 and jump to 80. That's terrible. So you have to monitor temperature. I think I see you saw, yeah, your whole operation will be covered by Apex. I mean, I don't have one. I'm jealous because definitely will be
The thing
helpful.
is,
You don't
yeah,
have to have that kind of thing, but if you do, just make sure. The other thing is keep your tanks separate. Your reef tank and your seahorse tank, they should have separate nets, separate feeding devices, separate. If you do one tank, a water change, get water on you, wash your hands really well before you go to the seahorse tank, because you just don't want any cross contamination, because
I do that between tanks, literally. There's not a
Mhm.
piece, every single piece of equipment goes into a tank is labeled for a specific tank. And I never touch one tank without scrubbing before I go to the next one, because you never know for sure what you might have, because we can't see it. Our vision isn't that acute, isn't that perfect. And so I have everything is on a separate system.
absolutely. And Ray, you made a good point too. It does depend on the species. What's the species for abdominalis, or what's the temperature for abdominalis? Sorry.
68 max, but wintertime, mine are probably closer to 58.
Yeah.
Maybe I've had times as low as 54, but most of the time they're running, like in the summer, they'll be in the range of, maybe as low as 60 if we have a cold day. But on a hot day, then the air conditioner that I have in the room there will limit it to 68. I don't use chillers; they're too expensive. I bought a $50 5,000 air conditioning unit used, and so I just use that to cool the area that the tank is in.
I need to find. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
A lot cheaper than a chiller.
I was just going to
Yeah.
say I need to find the link to the Wine Wednesday episode when you showed us, because he like has a freaking, excuse my language, freaking tent, an air conditioner. It's awesome. Or he did. Sorry, but it was very cool. And yeah, I'm just saying that I would say the difference, the biggest difference, is temperature and feeding. I would say.
And I'm with Heather. I keep my tanks year round 67 to 72 for Erectus. Like in the winter, because where I live, we get hot and freezing. So I have heaters and chillers. So in the winter, they go down to 67 or so. In the summer, the highest they get is around 72.
I'm curious to you and Heather. Have you noticed breeding depending on the seasons that you're creating via temp? Like, do they breed all year round, or?
Mine seem to try year round, but like you know, I haven't had any fry since Sandy.
Right.
But they year round they seem to work on it. It seems like Candy and Scrappy Doo. You got to remember, Scrappy Doo is her son, and he's still really young and inexperienced. You know, he's like 2 years old now, and they're getting closer. I think they're lining up better finally. But I think part of it was like Cheryl said, is that when they're younger and he hasn't had anybody to watch to see how it's done, it's a learning experience for them too sometimes. Some are better at it than others. I mean, Sandy became a father when he was 6 months old, 5 or 6 months, but I haven't had Fry since him. So,
I've had seahorses that never gave fry, and then I've had others that never stopped giving them. So there's quite an extreme there, and that's not strictly due to the species, although the reading that I have done over the years, I believe that there are certain species that only produce at certain times of the year. But the ones that I'm most involved with, I've had 7 different species, but mostly dealt with the reed-eye, which the first ones I raised, and then the last ones that I raised were the erect. And with the reed-eye, they all seem to breed all the time. With the erectus, I had most of them would breed all the time, but some of them would never breed, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I'm like, give me a whip or something, because no, I would never whip him. But I mean, my seahorses just, oh my gosh, he finally spurted out 10, and they weren't very healthy. And I did see a Seahorse Sources group where the person showed underdeveloped fry, and Cheryl said that's normal for newer, younger seahorses. But I'm just like, come on, I want my babies. But
I watched the Preakness, and they were using whips to get more out of the horses then.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say too, Ray put this in the private chat, and I done exposed you, Ray. Sorry, but it'd be interesting to go back and look at all the posts in the org in the early 2000s and just see how much bad info we were giving back then, and we don't have to deal with today. That'd be a great episode. I think we're going to do it. And I do want to end on, I'm going to let you all talk one more time, but I'm going to have to end because I have to go pick up the, we'll be back next week with freshwater dips and more. But I do want to end, when we did the show and tell episode, I didn't look at the actual post. So I want to share those seahorse pictures and videos that were shared on that post as we end. But Cheryl, did you have something else to say? Go ahead.
Real quick, it says here, Ray Ford, be interesting to be able to go back to all the posts on the org in the early 2000s and see just how much any bad information. I'm admin on the org. I have been for years. I can pull up all that info. Literally.
Let's make it a Wine Wednesday.
Yeah, see what's in
Oh,
there.
man, you don't want to go there. Do you know how much information is on there?
I
It's
think my
like the
memory
books
number is
I
about
have from the
72.
60s. Yeah, I mean, there's so much old what people thought, but that's true of pretty much anything
But the
when you
thing is,
think about
there's still a huge amount of great information on there.
Yes,
That is, and the
absolutely.
thing is, I've already talked with Mark, and I'm going to be modifying some stuff to make it more accessible. And it's a project in work, but anyway,
Well,
I've been
I would just say number one, as Cheryl said, there's still good information. Maybe just check the date on anything you look at. Make sure it's recent. And number two, that's why I'm trying to do the other site. It will be a spinoff, a site to seahorse.org because that is the master. And I will do one with just the newest information. And I will run it by Cheryl, Ray, Dan, all those people before it's live. So, we're closing in on the time I have to go get the daughter. Can I show the pictures and videos, guys? Is that okay?
yeah.
Okay, let's see if I can get it up.
Poor man's
These
Reed
were
asking about can he order male and female? Order from someone that is a reputable breeder, and they'll give you a male and female. Make sure for you.
absolutely,
Don't buy
absolutely
from an
agree.
LFS.
Sorry, Ray, go ahead, finish.
Don't buy from an LFS. They only
Yeah.
think they know about them.
yeah.
Well, and if you're at an LFS and it happens to be Wednesday after 8 p.m., no, I'm just kidding. But if you're at an LFS and you're looking at seahorses and you believe they're captive bred and et cetera, call or message one of us and do a video and show us, and we can definitely tell you which is male or female, or if they're not, and et cetera. Which females can change, but we're going too deep for tonight. All right. So real quick, these were the videos that I didn't share earlier.
What are the orange spots on your shoulder?
What?
It's your shirt. I'm kidding with you.
Oh, okay. I'm going to show the videos that versus group on the show and tell that I did not share. So here we go. Let me try to make it big. I got to jump back and forth, guys. Sorry. All right. So these are, guess whose seahorses these are, guys?
Heather's.
I recognize the tank.
Yeah.
Look how happy they are. They're all like, Mama, feed
Yeah,
me.
they're all mom.
Well, they got their own home.
Yeah.
They do. And I love those, man. My seahorses love them. Heather, have you noticed since you put the shower curtains in, do your seahorses tend to stay up there more? Because I constantly wonder, about oxygenation and stuff. My seahorses are on those shower curtains constantly. And I think they just love them. I think they
Mine
just like them.
only get on them when they're gonna eat. I've noticed, or sometimes when they're mating, but they don't hang out there. They like to hang out on. All have favorite hitches, but I hung my shower curtain rings right over the feeding stations, like in between. So they like to hang on them, and then they can eat out of both dishes. They swing back and forth and hit all the feeding stations at once.
Holly, the reason they like the shower curtains is it gives them privacy behind closed doors.
I see. Well, I would just say my seahorses literally sleep on them. So they just like them, period. Just is a good fit for seahorses. And it's not, if you're looking for a natural looking tank, obviously isn't very natural looking, but they love them. All right, let me see if I can go back without restarting. Hang on, let me stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah, and my rings are hanging vertically too. They're not horizontal like hers. They're up and down.
Gotcha.
So they kind of swing. So
I can make a comment on that, but I'm not going to touch it.
They're swingers.
All right.
I'll
Okay,
say
we
it.
saw that one. Okay, now let's look at, I'm going to have to reshare every time apparently, but here's Vincent. And we had Vincent on previously. Sorry, guys, I got to go back and forth every time. And these are all in Seahorse Sources group, obviously on the show and tell post. But look at that. I miss that so much.
Yeah, look at them
Yeah.
all. They're
What's
so
his
cute when
name
they're
that posted this?
I'm sorry, what?
What's the name of the guy that posted this?
Vincent.
Okay.
He was on a couple of weeks ago. See his char chamber there in the, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Robert King chamber?
Yeah, and he was back here earlier today too, and I
Yeah.
recognized the tank and the seahorses.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a beautiful job of taking care of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can already see yellow ones and white ones. And the
Oh,
thing
yeah.
is, as he
Mhm.
gets ready to sell them, if he puts them in a tank with, like a blue background stuff, they'll color up. And I mean, they're happy seahorses. They're healthy. I just love it. I never care about
Yeah.
color myself.
I'm really impressed with the work that he's doing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Go, Vincent. Okay. Let's see if I can find the next one. Oh, it keeps jumping me back and forth. Sorry, guys. Takes me a minute. But I did want to show them because you guys posted them and we care. So, all right. Heather's. We had Vincent's. Maybe it'll let me go back and forth now. All right. So here is Cheryl's picture. Cheryl, what are these guys?
Those are two juvenile hippocampus combs.
Ah,
The one on the lower, the yellow right now, was making serious advances to the female who's currently hitching to his head. The
love
problem
it.
was he was getting so excited, he was turning his pouch actually red. She would
Ooh.
come over and he was dragging her in circles.
Ooh.
And she backed off, swam off, and came back several times. And this was the final culmination of their copulation.
Jeez. Apparently,
Yeah.
I cannot. Okay, well, here is this is the kind of stuff you can see in group. This is Antoine Seahorse. Look at that beauty. Is that a reed eye, Ray? Looks like reed eye.
No,
Looks
No?
like red eye to me.
I don't know.
It doesn't look like a blue eye.
Be interested to know. All right, next. I just want to show them because I didn't when I should have. This is another Antoinette. Now what does that look like to you guys?
Oh.
Looks like Cuda to me.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that. I bet that other seahorse is too, because the same
Probably.
There's so
person.
damn many different kudas, it's not funny.
I know, but
Yeah,
Antoinette, now we
Cuda-
need to know. Are they Cuda?
Cuda's the catch-all for anything that we haven't studied yet.
Well, they still look like Cuda that I know. That when I got
Well,
Cuda
it doesn't look like red eye or erectus.
no. Listen. When I got Cuda from Dan, my yellow Cuda, I had a yellow and an orange, and the yellow looked just like that. I'm telling you, in my opinion, that's Cuda. Let us know if we're
That
wrong.
big head, darling.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Mhm.
And this is Regina, first baby seahorses from adults. Look how small they are. That's a thermometer. Jeez.
This is going
Love
to be
it.
an erectus, it looks like.
Yep, I agree. And I think that's it, but I just wanted to make sure to share them because I sometimes
Go back
slack
to
and
the
don't put
picture from
anything down
Wine
one episode.
Wednesday that you just wiped out.
What was it?
The picture, last picture that you just. Reason I wanted to make a comment on this, if you can bring it back.
I don't know. If what was the picture, Cheryl?
My large male combs.
Oh, okay. Hang on, I can't. Advertising the Wine Wednesday that was about Cheryl's tanks and tubs. You mean this?
Okay. That particular male is the
Nope, didn't
same
work.
male
Okay,
that
go ahead.
I found. Yeah, if you could blow them up, it'd be great, but you probably can't. But that is the same male. Perfect. That is the same male that I bought at the local fish store that was emaciated.
Mm.
I mean, he looked like he looked worse than a Biafran child. He was that bad. His mate was almost as bad. He was a large adult, and I spent 6 months in a panic, and another 6 months. And that was him a year after I got him.
You're the master, Cheryl. Nobody doubts that. I mean, he is amazing. And
I'm just not,
amazing the work you
I'm
did
not
with
trying
him.
to be egotistical. This
No.
Seahorse is the love of my life. And I'm
Yes.
so proud to see him live as many years as he did in my home.
You should be. Man, all I had was a big ass purple erectus, and I was proud as hell. So you having a gorgeous combs, man. I mean, we need to tell the world for sure.
Yeah.
But okay, guys, I
All right.
think
You need to go pick up your kids.
I gotta go get supper.
There you go. All right. If I missed your questions this week, please come back next week. Even when we have a topic, like next week, we plan to cover freshwater dips and show you videos of the reactions. Still come if you have a question that's about anything, because after we show the videos, we'll cover questions. So come every week. Make sure you're subscribed. We appreciate you coming. And I'll just close with Happy Wine Wednesday.
And one quick,
Right.
please,
Go ahead, Cheryl.
questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We're not going to tear you apart. We're not going to hurt you. We're not going to call you stupid. We are here to help you become successful.
99% of your questions are the questions that we asked, right? So, I mean, don't be afraid. But a glass, if you have one, we're going to have to end it.